Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Why Am I Yelling Live? My name is Krista Rizzo. I am your host, and today I am joined by the amazing Sue Detweiler. She is a mom of 6 children. 6. I'm a mom of 2, and I feel like I'm overwhelmed with that, and we're going to talk about that. She is an author. She is a speaker. She is a minister, and we're going to talk all about all the wonderful things that she is doing for her community and what she does as her passion in life. So Sue, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you.
Krista, it's great being here too. And I love your passion of empowering others.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It has been, a twisty road, which I think we can all join in that roller coaster. But that has been something that I've always done, right? It's been important to me to help lift other people up and support others. And it's where I get my energy from too, I think. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. It's all about Sue today. I like to start at the beginning. So tell me how you got, because you have a very interesting story. I don't know all of it. I know some of it. Tell me how you got into ministry, how you got into education, and how you found your passion where you are right now.
Well, when I began in ministry, I had never heard another woman preach on a Sunday morning until I did it. So I did not have role models. I came from a very conservative background.
Right.
And I remember waking up at the age of 16, the farm lights coming through my window, and I sensed a deep call from God. And I assumed that meant I would be overseas in missions and I'd probably be single all of my life. That wasn't the case. But I began in ministry very young. I was ordained at the end of 21 going on 22.
Wow. Wow.
And really was one of the first at that time. So I have had the privilege of being a pioneer, and I opened doors for other people and other women. And one of the things I love is that I have been preaching for so long that, my children, they grew up with a mama preaching. So
Right. It's like your job, and also you're a mom, and I feel like that's what we do, right?
That's right.
So you've got 6 kids.
Yes.
And you have been in ministry the whole. So let's talk about how you manage that.
Well, I was in ministry first, and when I got married to my husband, I didn't want to have children right away. Yeah. I was, in seminary and things like that. And we had planted a church in Nashville, Tennessee. But when it was 6 years after we'd been married, I had my first baby, and we went through a really horrific experience. So my baby's 5 weeks old. And, you put your baby to bed, and then I woke up in the middle of the night and she was screaming and I couldn't get to her. And, it was a different type of scream. I was disoriented. I couldn't breathe. My eyes were all stuffed up. I got turned around in a closet, went across the way and picked up my window and realized that my house was on fire. And I had no idea. I was so disoriented from the smoke inhalation that I couldn't even find the doorway out. And so I did what most people do in those types of situations. I dropped to my knees and I prayed help. Right. By the grace of God, my husband got home. He got the firemen. The fire trucks had been stopped by trains. And so the house next to us that was under construction was completely down to the ground. And our house, it was like an inferno. And by the grace of God, my husband came in, got the baby. I'm raspily screaming, get my baby out. And then they rushed us to the hospital, and I wish I could say that it got better from then. Our life was saved. My daughter's life was saved, but really it got worse from that point on. It was terrible.
I haven't known you for very long. So, and I've only been following you for a short amount of time. We did a challenge together recently. That's how we were introduced. We just started recently following each other. So I don't know a lot of your backstory. I know some of it. So you are not immune or acquainted with children. And so I have a lot of followers who are moms.
Yes.
And I have several followers who are moms who have lost children. One of my dear friends lost her son to a traumatic brain injury when he was 22 or 23 years old. And I follow her and she follows me. And we have since, created a little bit of a following. You have lost a child.
I have. I did not lose Rachel.
Right.
Rachel is now 30 and she's the mom of 3 children. I'm a Mimi
Which
to 5
seems
so
impossible
far.
because you look like you're 30 yourself.
Oh,
Oh, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah. I've lived a lot of life, so I'm very grateful for the life I've lived. Well, it was in October, Krista, that we received a phone call of my son's death. But I probably should back up a little bit farther.
Yes.
After 4 daughters, we felt called to adopt 2 older boys.
Okay.
And part of what happened is my heart was broken for all the older orphans in the world
Yes.
that are not adopted. And so our sons were from Brazil,
Okay.
12 and 8 when we adopted them. And they were born drug addicted.
Okay.
So that impacts you for the rest of your
Yes, it
life.
does. Yep.
Your mental capacity, your reasoning ability, fetal alcohol syndrome, drugs and
Yep.
alcohol.
Yep.
So, these boys, oh, they came into all these young mamas, my daughters that were 18, 16, 14, and 12, surrounded in love. They were so funny at that point. And um, they would make home videos. They were just learning the language. But we saw so much miraculous transformation. Both boys made commitments of faith, and we saw change in their lives. And yet there was trauma. So,
Yes.
oldest son Dre, regularly from the time we adopted him, he would wake up screaming, panic attacks.
Right.
There was never a significant attachment in their lives except with
Right.
each other, and then with myself. There were so many hurdles. You know, Even though the psychologist called us realist when we
Yeah.
were adopting our sons, I still think we were idealistic. In some sense, we hoped to adopt these boys and ride
Yep.
off into the sunset. And
Yep.
it was much more difficult than that. And
I have
the
to say that
difficulty,
go
go ahead.
well, I want to point out the fact that you've adopted older children, and that's a big responsibility. And there's a lot that a lot of people don't think about, right? And you just said it. You had an idea that you were going to ride off into the sunset and everything was going to be fine, and you probably had, like we all do, right? We have kids and we think, oh, their life is going to be perfect. They're going to be great students, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and then for some reason you are thrown a curveball.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you are thrown multiple curveballs. And so how do you handle overcoming or working through those curveballs?
Well, it's definitely a process. And as a parent, really the difficulty began for us with our sons when they experimented with drugs. And
As older kids.
older kids. So we
Yeah.
had adopted them. And then it was like, for them, it was like flipping a switch where
Yeah.
they experimented and were immediately addicted. And that aspect changed so much within our house in terms of safety. I have so many stories of difficult experiences that as pastors, we personally had never faced before. People in our congregation had faced it, but
Sure.
I didn't know on the inside when you have a family member that is drug addicted, and for us, two boys, you know what that's like, how that impacts your life. Um, Neither did I experience before how much the culture blames you as a parent for your child's choices when it comes to drugs. We had never had that experience before of people not knowing you,
Right.
never meeting
Right.
you, and yet assuming and making assumptions of who you were as a parent. So we went through all those types of things with our sons, which, you know, if you have parents, I can talk more deeply about that.
I
Anyone
mean,
has been in that culture, it's intense.
yes, I can't imagine any. That's probably the perfect word for that situation. Um, parenting is intense enough, and I think when you add extra unexpected things like, you know, substance abuse or alcoholism or even illness into it, right? It becomes
Yeah.
that much more magnified.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, through your ministry, I'm going to assume this, right? How do you recover from the loss of a child? Because you're never going to recover. Like, I'm going to put that out there, right? But what is your advice for
Mm-hmm.
parents?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the situation of how your child dies is going to make a big difference. You know, if your child is a young baby and you've been in the ICU, often you're going to have an experience where people come around you and gather around you. So I do think there's going to be different types of grieving processes. For me, the loss of Dre, who was 23
Okay.
years old,
So young.
and he had been clean from drugs for a while, which I have learned that drug overdoses often happen when someone has been clean from drugs and then they go back and use them.
Right.
So I was called by a coroner who let me know that he had died of an apparent drug overdose and was plunged immediately. I mean, I could feel the cortisol coming into my body.
Of course.
It was such an intensity. And then calling my other son, who was 19 or 20 at that point, and we cried together. We chose to do a private memorial, and we chose not to make it very public at that point.
Right.
And there was a lot of reasons why we chose to do that. One, we had moved to Texas, and in Tennessee, the boys would have known more people. But in Texas, really, there wasn't a community that knew them well at that point. And then also, we wanted to grieve quietly. We didn't want to field the questions. We didn't want to go through the history. I didn't have the emotional strength.
Yeah.
So the types of things that I personally did for my healing at that point is, as pastors, we have someone that we can call at any point and make an appointment with, that is a counselor, and it's a private. So I totally did all of those types of things. I made those appointments. I talked with the people that I needed to talk with, but primarily I was quiet. And when something is so deep for me, I get quiet. And people, I actually got criticized for not putting it on Facebook.
What?
Criticized me for I didn't really love my son, or else I would have made
I would
it.
have posted it on social media. That is a terrible thing to say.
I
I
know.
can't even.
It took me 6 months really to do that, and it was really, I think it was Chris and Jen Gottlieb who were recommending, sharing those
Yep.
places of pain.
Yep. Yep.
It's very emotional when I shared it. And what's been interesting, Krista, is the response. I think there were probably 350 comments, but
I watched it. I mean, and cried the whole way with you. Like,
Mhm. The personal interactions with people, I found out people messaged me and said, we lost our son. This is what happened. We didn't share either. And that's the part for parents grieving that I think is different when it's something
yeah,
related to drugs or a traumatic death, that the grieving is different
different.
because partly because there's so much judgment. There's so much judgment that you as a parent failed your child. And
Right.
that is why. And and as parents, we all fail our children multiple times a day,
All the time, every
all the
day.
time. Uh, but I chose I think part of my healing, Krista, was when I got to that point 6 months later, where I began to share it and began to share it with the purpose of helping others. For me, that is when I'll share my pain, or I'll, open up my life in the vulnerability, is because I know that others have experienced it and they need to know that they're not alone.
So now we're going to segue into the empowerment piece.
Yeah.
Because I think that's really important. And the conversation that we are having right now is an extremely empowering one, right? You are sharing your story, and it is a powerful one. It is, oh, my shades, sorry. It's one that a lot of people can relate to. And through this, I feel like you have now, you're reaching a new audience on top of the audience you've already had, right? And you are able to empower in a much bigger way. So how does that make you feel? Like, how are you using this newfound platform, I guess, to help empower others?
Well, Krista, I have always been about empowering and encourage others. I think as women, often women will fall into a couple of different camps. I have definitely been in relationship with women where they find a place and they try to hold on to their place and they
Yeah.
put you down. They hold you back. I
Yeah. Oh, yes. We've all had that. Yep.
women like that, I can't stand it.
Yeah.
For me, every platform that God has ever given me, it has been for the purpose of helping and serving other people. And so in all three of my books, I've shared lots and lots of intimate stories. But right now, what I'm most feeling called to do is really empower others that have a message to gain momentum. And part of what's been happening, Krista, for years actually, people have been contacting me, and I've published their books, I've helped them build their platforms, I've helped them get onto television and radio, and I've been a private behind the scenes coach, and I would just develop contracts for each project.
Right.
And I kept it quiet because I couldn't handle any more work. And at the beginning of COVID, I really heard the Lord say, and many people have heard this,
Yeah.
pivot
Yep.
was the word, pivot.
Yep.
It's time for you to write your next book. It's time for you to launch a more public version of helping to coach people with their messages and help them find momentum. It's help, and part of that passion is I believe that people find freedom when they fulfill their purpose. When they're living in a reality that's a stuck reality, which many people in COVID feel very stuck. You know,
Yes.
their jobs are no longer the same.
Yep.
They have to find a
Oh,
new.
please. Homeschooling and all that. I mean,
Yes. Yes. Or now they're working and their children are 6 feet
yep,
away from them.
that's me.
How old are your
It's a
kids?
joy. 14 and 8. So we had, it was definitely, it was something, that's for sure.
Oh, you had asked me earlier about education and how I got into
Yes.
education. Part of what we did in Nashville, I was part of a brand new model at that time of homeschool education. So we offered a supplemental program that was a mix between private Christian education and homeschool. So they
Okay.
would come in 2 days a week, and it was so popular that we had to multiply and have another 2-day program. So
Wow.
we had 250 students was all that we could do. I was the principal of this academy. And then we had people like Winona's Judd's kids came
Yeah.
there. Miley Cyrus, when she was in the
Wow.
went there, you know, because we were in Nashville and
Yeah.
it was a different way of educating,
Right.
where, you know, I hired the teachers. Many of them were homeschooling their own children, you know, so
Yeah.
they'd come on the days. And then I homeschooled for 18 years, all
Wow.
all 6 of my children. So that part of education. And then the other thing that I got to do, Krista, that's a real passion of mine, I began another school in this ministry called Life School of Ministry. We had 500 students, and it was a 2-year training program for those that felt called to ministry. And so I taught Bible and theology and developed that program and helped other people in other states and countries found schools of ministry. So that's another one of my passions. And it's part of why we were assigned to move here and plant southeast of Dallas. We're planting a church there's a 5-acre property, 3 buildings. One of the buildings is a dormitory that can sleep 50 people.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway, that's how I got into education. And education for me has been all about empowering other people to be able to fulfill their life dream. But this new adventure is taking all of that background and putting it online
Yeah.
and developing, helping people and connecting really on a global basis, people that have a message. It's already in their heart, it's already
Yep.
burning, and equipping them to gain momentum in that message.
I love that so much. It's so supportive and it's so, we keep using the word empowering, but I really think like it feels so like authentic and supportive to me. And I love that because there are, especially right now, like I can't tell you how many people I've just been working with just to, help them through the parenting with the COVID and all the things that are happening. Right. But there are a lot of parents out there and a lot of people out there who are like, what am I supposed to do? And how am I supposed to make it all work together? And if there's a way that I can manage it better, then that's the way I need to do it. Right. And so I think that when you are somebody who has experienced, you chose to homeschool your children before it was even cool, because now it's going to be cool to homeschool your kids starting in September or whenever August. Right.
Yeah.
And then people are panicking. Like I am in all out panic. My kids go to school in New York City. So it's almost impossible for them to go back to school like normal humans. And so, you're in a little bit of a panic mode and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I have a full-time job. I am a coach and a speaker and all the other things. And my husband has a full-time job. And how am I going to teach my kids? And how am I going to make sure they're getting what they need? And when you have a program around that and you have assistance and you have support, it feels good to know that that exists. So we're going to put all that information in the chat.
Yeah.
I know that you are about to launch something very special. So I want you to talk about that because I think our listeners need to know about that as well.
Yeah, I am doing a 4-day freedom challenge, and it has to do with equipping them to identify, become crystal clear on that message, because often you have a number of different messages, but
Right.
what's the one that you are to take action on? And it's a 4-day challenge. And part of what I'm doing is I really believe in giving first. And one group of people right now during COVID that I'm concerned about is the elderly and
Yes.
having enough to eat. And
Yes.
there's one nonprofit that does this so well. It's called Meals on Wheels. I'm sure
Love
you've heard of
them.
it.
Love them. My grandmother used to deliver Meals on Wheels.
Well, they are the best organized to really reach the seniors and the disabled. And so, what I'm doing is it's basically a fundraiser for Meals on Wheels, and whatever proceeds come in, we'll just write a check to Meals on Wheels.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, give first. I really believe that.
Me too.
There's something about that culture of generosity that when that's a part of who you are, you make a greater impact on the world.
I think that's amazing. And when does the challenge start?
Well, they can sign up for it now. I'll put a link below. And it starts on Monday.
Okay. I just put all your stuff in here. So everybody, thank you for being here. This was a beautiful conversation. I really appreciate this. Is there anything else you need the world to know before we sign off?
Well, I want you to know, if you're listening either right now or maybe you see this afterwards, that you're not alone and that your life matters. Who you are so incredibly valuable, and you already have so much inside of you. And if you felt like you needed a fresh purpose in this season, or maybe you've been putting it off, you've known you've needed to write a book or speak or build a coaching ministry, start a business, you've known you were supposed to do it. I'm just saying to you right now, now's the time. Don't let that fear stop you. Don't let it stop you, but move forward in faith that you're a difference maker. And I'm excited to hear the stories of all the ways that you're going to impact lives.
That's amazing. And I don't know if you know this, but one of the mantras that I live by is deep faith eliminates fear. I actually did my TEDx talk about it. So I love that we are ending on this because I could not possibly agree with you more. Thank you for being here, beautiful woman. I'm so blessed to have you on this show, and I really appreciate you being here. Everybody, follow Sue. All of her information is in the chat right now on the comment section. Join her challenge because she is loaded with great information, knowledge, experience, empowerment. She's got all the things. So go ahead and do that. I hope you guys all have a great 4th of July weekend among the COVID. So please be safe and be smart and do all the things you're supposed to do while spending time with people that you love. You stay right there, my guest, and we're going to sign off and say goodbye to everybody else. And we'll be back here next week with another guest for Why Am I Yelling Live? Thanks, everybody.